Resident Evil Revelations is a black sheep in the franchise. It debuted in an era where titles being made were very action-oriented and was the first title in the franchise directed by Koshi Nakanashi, who also directed Resident Evil 7 and now the director of Resident Evil 9. Revelations gave us what Resident Evil was missing at the time, and Biohazard saved the franchise. If that's anything to go by, then this Koshi guy is no joke. But anyways, Revelations actually released in 2012 exclusively to the 3DS and would later be ported to basically every other console on the planet. This of course leads to a small amount of controls that are a little iffy or inconsistent on the console or PC, especially the dodge. Not enough to ruin the gameplay experience, but you're probably better off just keeping distance from the enemies instead of relying on that jank-ass dodge. Resident Evil Revelations has lots of upsides and lots of downsides, so let's dive into the scariest of the action horror renaissance era, Resident Evil Revelations. We start off the game on a boat. It's storming hard and the waves are strong. Immediately we are introduced to a new character, Parker Luciani, former FBC member turned BSAA affiliate. Parker is our companion during this story. And we play as no other than Jill Valentine, making her first canonical appearance since Resident Evil 3. We're looking for Chris, and not so much his partner Jessica, who we will get into later, but his signal last pinged over a cruise ship called the Queen Zenobia. Right away you can tell the atmosphere of the game is much darker than games past, and the enemies carry the same tonal shift. The main base enemy type in Revelations is the Ooze. Ooze are humans who have been mutated after contracting T-Abyss, a Group 6 retrovirus engineered as a bioweapon, such as the increase in water retention in cells to deal with the water pressure. In the lower pressure environments humans reside in, Ooze take the form of waterlogged corpses, and shed water continuously in the form of slime. To survive, they are driven to drink massive quantities of water. Their movement pattern is awkward and unpredictable due to their feet mutating into crooked stumps. The reason for this is unknown, but theorized it could be to aid maneuvering through vents in small spaces. This gives them an odd shuffling gait as they walk forwards. Despite this oddity, they make use of the falling forward momentum to pick up speed when assaulting prey. Their needle-like teeth and groaning combined with their jerky shuffle towards the player makes them probably the scariest base enemy type in the franchise. The only other competitor I see being the Mold in Resident Evil 7, but I'm not really frightened by them.
Deleted JP.
Whoa! What is that?
Okay, maybe just a little bit. Moving on, we find Chris locked in a room and tied to a chair, only to realize it was a setup. Jill and Parker are gassed and knocked out, then taken to a lower part of the ship, locked in separate rooms having nothing left but their radios. The man in the gas mask, who presumably is responsible for their whereabouts, is soon revealed to be the leader of the revived Il Veltro. More on that later. I want to take a second to talk about the scanner. The item scanner is, you guessed it, a scanner to find items that you can't see unless scanned. I personally never minded this, but it always felt like a chore, and sometimes you don't want to search every corner of every room. I always felt kinda guilty leaving a room knowing I left at least one or two items just laying around in there because I couldn't be bothered to scan. I am definitely a completionist, so it just doesn't feel right to leave an item behind, but at the same time, whenever it's every single room, it's like, you can't be fucked, you know? I don't think the scanner is inherently bad, but I do think it would have been way better just to have items laying around instead. Moving on, we switch over to Chris, who we will find is not on a boat at all, and actually in Valkoinen and Mock Mountains in Europe, investigating what is supposed to be home to a revived Il Veltro base. And wouldn't you believe it, they find the base. Just as this happens, Chris is radioed by Captain O'Brien, who we interacted with earlier while playing as Jill and Parker. O'Brien proceeds to tell Chris and Jessica, oh yeah, Jessica. Anyways, he says that Jill and Parker lost signal over the Mediterranean. But wait, didn't he say the same thing to Jill and Parker about Chris and Jessica? Something fishy is going on here. Get it? Fishy? Mediterranean? Okay, I'll go. Anyways, past episode 2, the story isn't much worth following, if I'm being totally honest, which is really weird because this is probably in my personal top 5 depending on how long it's been since I played it. The characters besides Jill, Chris, and Parker are pretty forgettable, and the only ones to ever make any kind of meaningful return to the series are, you guessed it, Chris and Jill. Raymond is cool towards the end of the game, and I actually started to like him, only to find out he double-crossed us, and he actually works for Tricell, hence how they became so deeply involved in Resident Evil 5, which chronologically follows Revelations. The terrorists in this scenario don't even have a good reason this time. They're mad about Terra Grigia's solar advancement or whatever. I don't know, dude. I know by my grandparents' house they're building tons of solar panels out in the country, and it kinda pisses me off, but not enough to like release hunters onto their town. That's just me, though. This is a story full of lies, mystery, and confusion, and honestly, after playing through the game 6 or 7 times by this point, I had to watch a recap before making this video just because I couldn't remember what was even going on during the game, and I cannot be fucked right now to play it. Playing this game is at least a 12-hour endeavor if you're actually, if you're not speedrunning. It's just a lot of stuff with no genuine substance. I think the game knows it too, because at the beginning of every episode you get a recap as if you have the memory of a goldfish, and I understand because the game released episodically, but even then it's like, come on man, we don't need that every episode. Or like in the final release, they should have only had it be a thing that happens whenever you continue a playthrough as opposed to just moving on to the next chapter, right? But I think they also do this just because the game is actually all over the place, and without those recaps, you're just not gonna know what's going on. But I think the reason I like it so much is because of the atmosphere and music. Revelations proved that Capcom can shift gears back into horror if they really wanted to, but after seeing how amazing it performed, I'm not surprised that we got Resident Evil 6 literally just months later, not even a full year. That's 2 mainline games in the same year. And yes, Revelations 1 and 2 are as mainline as other numbered titles. Just because they are less popular doesn't take away from the fact that their stories, albeit unfortunately, do play a big role in the Resident Evil timeline as a whole compared to, something like Dead Aim or Umbrella Corps. The atmosphere is scary, the enemies are grotesque, and is responsible for probably the scariest lead up to a boss fight in Resident Evil history.
This is the Queen Zenobia. Emergency call number.
Of course not comparable now, but back then was horrifying to me, and really great for its time. I've never been someone who cares too deeply about story, and I think that's why the atmosphere carries this game for me. I love the environment of the cruise ship. Seeing all the slot machines and the giant clock combined with the music and mystery vibe you get from everything going on between the 2 main stories we're following makes this ship one of the more enjoyable and admirable environments in the series. The game also features a raid mode, which I wish was something they would do for future Resident Evil games, as both Revelations 1 and 2 have the best minigame mode in my opinion. The large list of characters and costumes, each with their own skills and buffs, combined with randomized weapon drops and upgrade drops, makes it a mode you can easily put 50 hours into. Speaking of weapon upgrades, you can find weapon upgrades laying around the whole game, some being significantly better than others, but there's nothing more satisfying than burst firing 5 shots out of Parker's government, instantly killing an ooze. The unlockables are nothing to write home to, no cool fancy weapons, and most of it is just ripped from other games like 5 with the Hydra, which is crazy to me because, literally every modern day Resident Evil game has sick unlockables. This bleeds into a big overarching problem with Revelations, which is the replayability is at an all-time low for the series. The story trophies are easy after only 2 playthroughs, and the rest are raid mode, and I think it's a bad sign when your minigame is better and more enjoyable than the actual story. They gave us split-screen co-op for the story and online for raid mode, which means they could have given us online for the main story, but that was just a big miss on their end. I would enjoy Revelations a lot more if I could play with a friend online, and I think I speak for everyone when I say that. Revelations isn't horrible, but it isn't great. And as I'm writing this review, I'm actually realizing in real time how much I really am not impressed with this game. I think if you haven't played it, you should give it a shot, but if you watch a story recap or your favorite streamer play through it instead, then honestly that is just about as good, if not better, than spending your own money, but to each their own. I really enjoy Revelations, and I have this awesome ability to just turn my brain off, not that it's ever on to begin with, but if you can really just kinda, dumb yourself down and forget that the story is actually unbearable, I think Revelations is a really fun game, and it's cool to see Chris kinda in that serious locked-in mode, It's also cool to see them reference Lost in Nightmares at the end of the game. I'm always someone who's like, oh, I know what that is. It feels so cool to get a reference or know what goes on next. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say for Revelations. I really like the game. I couldn't really tell you why other than atmosphere and music. So I'm still not even sure why I would place it so high, but I just really enjoy it and I can't help that. Let me know if anyone feels the same about this game or other games down in the comments below, if you know what I mean. But this has been Hayden from Cryo Reviews. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Peace, guys.